Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds is a high watermark for technical proficiency in horror films. It was, in a way, the grandfather or grandmother of films like Jurassic Park, in that it relied on a meticulously planned sequence of action set pieces that used an innovative combination of live, practical, and special effects elements. An experimental sodium vapor film process, or yellow screen, developed in the 1950s by special effects pioneer Petro Vlahos, was used in the bird attack scenes, as it removed the edge fringing that was typical in blue screen effects and allowed composited elements to blend more seamlessly against bright backgrounds. Disney would later win an Academy Award for Mary Poppins visual effects using this process. The Birds also had a unique sound effects design, mixing real bird sounds with synthesized tones made with a Trautonium, an analog synthesizer designed in the 1930s by Friedrich Trautwein, and later modified by composer-physicist Oskar Sala, who worked on the film.
Dad, are you home?
As a way to reinforce the contrast of eerie sound montages and long silences in the film, Hitchcock decided not to use any incidental score, though he did retain composer Bernard Herrmann as a sound consultant. Both in sound design and visual effects, The Birds was a standout piece of technical filmmaking for 1963 that still holds up fairly well, and, like Psycho before it, contains many techniques for creating tension that still show up in horror films today. The Birds was also a project that underscored Hitchcock's own issues with obsession, demonstrated by his unhealthy relationship with its star, Tippi Hedren. This controversy says a lot about the status of women at the time, and is a reminder that filmmaking is a real art, and art is always personal. Hitchcock had been searching for inspiration for a new film after the runaway success of Psycho. He read a bizarre story about a freak swarm of sooty shearwaters smashing into houses in Santa Cruz, possibly confused by fog and/or having been poisoned by eating dead fish. Fascinated by birds as a child, the incident clicked with Hitchcock, and he later realized he had already secured the rights for Daphne du Maurier's novelette The Birds for his television show. Having adapted her work before in Rebecca and Jamaica Inn, her story was an obvious fit. The novelette was a nightmare about the end of the world where ocean birds flock at sea and attack an English coastal town, told from the viewpoint of a lone narrator. Certain details in the story suggest the birds were a metaphor for the threat of communism. The attacks and ambiguous ending would be the only elements Hitchcock would preserve in his film. Hitchcock had wanted Joseph Stefano, who had adapted Robert Bloch's Psycho for the screen, to return for The Birds, but Stefano declined, allegedly saying the story didn't interest him. Stefano would later helm the first season of The Outer Limits for ABC. It would have been fascinating to see where he would have taken the script, as he and Hitchcock were both in their own way plumbing their own psyches, looking for the essence of horror. Hitchcock settled on screenwriter Evan Hunter, who had worked on Hitchcock's TV show and had just won acclaim for his novel, The Blackboard Jungle. The revised story would involve the romantic incursion of the impulsive young socialite Melanie Daniels into the seemingly isolated family of respected San Francisco lawyer Mitch Brenner, who spends the weekends with his mother Lydia and younger sister Kathy. Also present is Mitch's ex-girlfriend Annie, who provides much of the exposition regarding the emotional dynamics of Mitch's bachelorhood and his suspicious mother. As Melanie asserts herself romantically towards Mitch, a seemingly random series of bird attacks begins to escalate. Early on, the idea developed that the bird attacks in the film would be related to some guilty secret the town had, a punishment for some wrongdoing. This core idea was abandoned, yet it remains in the script in a subtextual form, and this makes for some ambiguous narrative resonances in the film. With the script in the works, the cast were assembled. Rod Taylor stepped in to fill the role of Mitch, and along with The Time Machine is one of his best-remembered performances. Jessica Tandy owns the role of the icy but ultimately sympathetic widow Lydia, with her real-life husband Hume Cronin providing a lot of input on the first draft of the script, which apparently Hitchcock wasn't satisfied with. A young Veronica Cartwright took the role of Kathy, and gets some of the film's more memorable lines.
He has a client now who shot his wife in the head 6 times. 6 times! Can you imagine it? I mean, even twice would be overdoing it. Don't you think?
Suzanne Pleshette took the role of the humble ex-lover Annie, and provides the film with most of its warmth. Hitchcock was rumored to have wanted Grace Kelly for the part of society girl Melanie Daniels, but she had recently married Prince Rainier of Monaco, and officially retired from acting. By coincidence, Hitchcock saw model Tippi Hedren in a television ad that had seagulls in it, and then later on the Today Show. He was immediately taken with her, and set about bringing Hedren in and making her his new protege, despite her lack of film experience. It was the chance of a lifetime for Hedren, and also one that ruined her career for some years to follow, as Hitchcock developed an obsessive, controlling attitude towards her on and off the set, and when Hedren had had enough and broke her contract with him, he blackballed her.
I don't know if any of you women have had the horrible experience of being the object of someone's obsession. Have any of you? I don't know whether you'd even answer that, but if you have, you would know exactly what that is like, and it is oppressive and frightening, and you find out that you've been followed, and you find out that your handwriting has been analyzed, and you find out that you're being spied upon, and made demands that you would never acquiesce under any circumstance. There was no one that I could go to say, this is what is happening and it's wrong. There was nobody to go to. Today, if this happened to me, I'd be a very rich woman. I received a Golden Globe, which was wonderful. And around the same time, I received a photoplay award, and I was asked to go to New York to accept it on The Tonight Show. Well, we weren't finished with Marnie, and I would have had to leave on Thursday evening and collect the award on Friday, but I would be back on Monday for work. And so I went to Mr. Hitchcock he was in his office on the set, and I asked if I could, I was excited about it, and that I needed to have a couple of days off to go to New York. And it was at that time when he made the demands on me that were so offensive to me that it was right then and there that I stopped all of it. I just said, I am not going any further with this. When Marnie is over, I am going to be out of this contract. And he said, well, you can't. You have your daughter to take care of. Your parents are getting older. And I said, nobody who loves me would want to be in a situation in which I am not happy, and I want to get out. He said, I'll ruin your career. I said, do what you have to do. I'm gone. And he did. He did ruin my career. He kept paying me my $600 a week. And after I got out of the Birds and Marnie, I was, as the expression goes, a hot actress. And I would later learn how many directors and producers wanted me for their films, but in order to get me, they would have to go through him. And all he said, it was so easy. All he said was, she isn't available. And I would hear about so many of those directors and producers. And the one that really hurt the most was Francois Truffaut, who wanted me for one of his films, and I didn't even know about it.
It seemed obsessive control over his leading women was, at this time in his life, an integral part of Hitchcock's creative process. While Kim Novak had no complaints with Hitchcock during the making of Vertigo in '58, and would dispute Hedren's portrayal of him, I think when he made Psycho, something had changed inside him, some personal catharsis that made him feel validated in pursuing his artistic vision, and along with it, his own personal inclinations, more aggressively than he ever had before. With the success Psycho had brought, he felt entitled to do what he wanted, regardless of how torturous the experience would be for Hedren. Torture being an applicable expression here, as the final upstairs attack sequence involved Hedren being basically tied to a wall, with enormous fans blowing on her and stagehands hurling live birds into the airflow so the cameras could capture her being hit by birds repeatedly. It's an infamous scene in filmmaking, as it took a week to shoot. And like the shower scene in Psycho, this scene is essentially a rape. But in the case of the birds, this is more a rape of the actress herself, not the character. It's somewhat telling that when Hedren approached Hitchcock, asking why her character would walk into a room she knows is full of birds waiting to attack her, he allegedly replied, "Because I tell you to."